Tapping your sword point on the ground during competitions or sparring, good or bad? Hi folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria, and over the years I have seen lots of people do this. I'm going to keep this fairly brief. What am I talking about exactly? So when people are sparring or competing, repeatedly tapping or bashing their point of the sword on the ground. I've seen it in HEMA, long sword, sabre, rapier, all sorts. I've seen it in modern Olympic style fencing, not so much with FA because it potentially caused problems with the equipment, but I have seen it in sabre. I've seen it in kendo as well, and I know people from kendo backgrounds who do it. There are good friends of mine in the HEMA world who do this when they're sparring. I think some of them know they do it, some of them do it consciously, some of them do it as a nervous thing, some of them don't even know they do it. You know who you are. This is coming from a thread that I noticed on one of the Facebook HEMA pages, people discussing this. First of all, I have to say, absolutely, if you do this, if this is your choice to do this, well, then that's up to you, isn't it? I'm not going to say that you're bad for doing it in a modern sporting context on a hard floor where you're hopefully not damaging the floor, where you're using blunt-ended sparring weapons, blah, blah, blah. But this is the reason that I don't do it. When I train in HEMA, as opposed to doing, whether it's, you know, like kendo or modern fencing or LARP or reenactment or whatever, when I train in HEMA, I try to train ways that I would advise people to train if they were training to fight with sharp swords in a duel in the future. And the simple fact is, I would categorically recommend my students to not repeatedly bash their points on the ground with a sharp sword. I think you're already seeing where I'm going with this. First of all, even in a training environment, it damages the floor, potentially damages the weapon. So actually in my club, I sometimes give penalties to people who are doing this, like push-ups or this kind of stuff, crunches, because I think it's a really bad habit. With a sharp sword, what are the possible ramifications? Well, the most obvious one is you might damage your tip. If you have a needle point, if you take your sharp Albion or whatever make sword you've got and you bash it repeatedly on the ground, if it's, for example, on gravel or on cobblestones, any kind of street, but even if it's just normal ground out that you might find in the countryside, you will damage, potentially bend, potentially break, very likely blunt the tip of the sword, not only for thrusting, because even a slightly blunted point can still be used effectively for thrusting, but you might damage the edges, the sharpened, hopefully razor sharp edges at the tip, which are really, really useful for tip cuts and a whole bunch of things, and getting through clothing as well. So, simple fact is, for me, it is an incredibly bad habit that I never want to get into myself, and I would strongly discourage my students from getting into, because it will damage the tips and edges of sharp swords and also potentially the ground of your training hall as well, but that's a kind of secondary issue. So if you want to do it, do it. I understand why people do it, for either for tactical reasons to unnerve the opponent or to G themselves up or just having a nervous twitch. I understand why people do it. I won't say it's like the greatest sin in the world, it's forgivable, but I would strongly urge you to try and get yourself out of that habit if you have an interest in training HEMA for using sharp weapons. I train with sharp weapons solo and I use antique weapons for training. I don't want to be training myself to bash them on the ground. And final thought as well, on grass, you'll notice that if you do this, the point sticks in the ground. If you're moving around, it might be fine if you're in a training hall or in a piste, in a hotel lobby at a training event or something. But if you're bashing the ground on grass, there's a very large likelihood that point will embed itself in the ground. And the moment you want to move forward, and you'll find yourself burying your crotch into a pommel, which is never pleasant, and potentially getting a weapon stuck in the ground at the second when you need it to be moving around, or falling over your own weapon, which makes you look really stupid. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you again for another video soon on the channel, and take care, folks.